King Solomon is the one who received wisdom from God and made the famous judgment of the two women and a baby. He is one of the most ambiguous characters in the Bible, since there are certain stories about him that are outside the Holy Book, such as the construction of the Temple of Jerusalem and the fact that he supposedly summoned 72 demons. But why would he do that? And what does the Bible say about this story of summoning demons? I'm going to explain all of that and much more to you here in this video. This type of longer video takes a lot of work to create. So I'd like to ask you all to please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it. Especially for those people who have certain doubts about this story of Solomon and the demons, all right? If you can help me even more, you can use the thanks button below, shaped like a little heart, and donate any amount with it. And also become a member of the channel. Thank you so much in advance, okay? You know that I love bringing stories here to the channel that are outside the Bible, like apocryphal books, and even the Koachia, for example, which has the 72 demons of Solomon. And whenever I say that Solomon supposedly summoned demons, there's always someone asking where I got that from, what are the biblical sources about it, saying that's a lie, and so on. And thinking about that, I decided to make this video here explaining to you the whole story of Solomon and these demons he supposedly summoned. And yes, there will be biblical passages here. But before that, let's talk a little about the Lesser Key of Solomon, also known as the Lemegeton, the Clavicula of Solomon. Anyway, this book has several names. Was it really Solomon who wrote this story? That's what we're going to find out now. The Lesser Key of Solomon is usually classified as a grimoire. And what exactly is a grimoire? Well, a grimoire would be a collection of medieval spells. This one specifically goes by several names, as I mentioned earlier, but perhaps the most well-known translation was done by MacGregor, Matters, and Aleister Crowley, which is the Goetia, the Lesser Key of Solomon. This book is said to have been inspired by several other mystical works, such as the Kabbalah, for example, containing information like symbols, and how to summon the famous 72 demons imprisoned by King Solomon. To give you an even better idea of how this grimoire works, Eliphas Levi, who was the guy who showed us what Baphomet would look like, said that whoever possessed the clavicles of Solomon would not only be able to summon and talk to all kinds of possible spirits, but also control their power. These clavicles were lost several times and then found again. They are nothing other than the talismans of the 72 names and the mysteries of the 32 paths, hieroglyphically reproduced in the tarot with the help of these signs and through their infinite combinations, like that of numbers and letters. In fact, one can reach the natural and mathematical revelation of all the secrets of nature, communicate with the entire hierarchy of intelligences and geniuses. And since the book appeared in the medieval era with an authorship that no one knows for sure who it was, but we'll talk about that in a moment, it was widely used by magicians, at least the first edition, right? Because later there was a wave of forging manuscripts, and it was no different with the clavicles of Solomon. From the clavicles came the conjurations, and then several other types of grimoires started to appear, like the Grimoire Verum and the Grand Grimoire, which were widely used to find hidden treasures. The Grimoire of Solomon was prominent throughout the 16th century. In it, there were figures and prayers that should be recited during the first 7 days of the new moon at sunrise, and the man who did this would suddenly feel full of knowledge. The example of the power of this book at the time is shown to us by the historian Menéndez Epilayo in Spain. About this book, the very learned bishop of Segovia, de Juan Bautista Perez, wrote a memorable opinion in 1595. The necromancers have a certain book of spells with unknown characters, which they call the Clavicula Salomonis, and which is forbidden in all the catalogs of the Inquisition. And the magicians pretend that it was Solomon who wrote it. In the Malleus Maleficarum, the Inquisitor says that the necromancers use a book they call Solomon, written in the Arabic language, and that it was found by Vigil in a prison in the mountains of Arabia. I think you already have an idea of what this grimoire would be, but who actually wrote it? Actually, this book is classified as pseudepigraphic, meaning a work with falsely attributed authorship. But the thing is a lot more complicated than that. According to the legend, after Shlomo received great wisdom from God, he supposedly had tremendous power over the world and used this wisdom to summon and control demons. He documented all of this, which became the legendary Key of Shlomo. However, the book's authorship is quite ambiguous. Some say that this Shlomo who wrote the work is actually another person, the wise magician Shlomo of Chaldea, who was confused with Shlomo, the king of the Jews. As I mentioned, there are multiple editions of the Grimoire. Some make the difference in separation between these two characters, both called Shlomo, very clear, but most attribute the authorship of the book to King Shlomo himself. The fact is that whether or not it was Shlomo who wrote this book, using some scriptures from the Bible and the Talmud, a rather curious story emerges about King Shlomo summoning demons, which has some details very similar to those in the Gitya. The question that arises from all this is why Shlomo, a man endowed with all the wisdom given by God himself, would summon demons. It doesn't make any sense, right? Yeah, if you think from the perspective that he would have summoned them for his own benefit, it really doesn't. However, there is a story in the Talmud that would explain all of this. Let's go. It all starts with the following. At a certain point in his story, Solomon decides to build the Temple of Jerusalem. However, for that, he couldn't use any kind of tool to cut the stones, since that would profane the ground, and he had orders from God himself not to use them. This information appears in two passages of the Bible, in Exodus and in the first book of Kings. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites the following. You yourselves have seen that I have spoken to you from heaven. Do not make idols of silver or gold to represent me. Make for me an altar of earth, and on it offer your burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, your sheep and your cattle. Wherever I cause my name to be honored, I will come to you and bless you. If you make me an altar of stones, do not build it with dressed stones, for if you use a tool on it, you will profane it. Do not go up to my altar on steps, or your nakedness may be exposed on it." In the construction of the temple, only blocks that were cut at the quarry were used, and no sound of hammer, chisel, or any other iron tool was heard in the temple during its construction. But how was he going to cut the stones without using any kind of tool? We can find that answer in the Talmud. There it says that Shlomo asked this question to the wise men, and they spoke about a creature called Shamir, which was used by Moshe to make the stones of the ephod. It was a plate where several precious stones would be placed, and the requirement to make it was very similar to Shlomo and the temple. Shlomo said to the wise men, "How should I make this stone be cut precisely without using iron?" They told him, with a creature called Shamir, which can cut stones, that Moshe brought and used to cut the stones of the ephod. Shamir would be a type of beetle or some kind of insect, which according to the Talmud itself fed on stones, and King Shlomo would have used them to cut the stones of the temple. And this insect would kind of eat the stones in a straight line. So it would be a perfect way to respect the rules given by God for the construction of the temple to happen. But then another question would arise. Where would it be possible to find this so-called Shamir? And it was at that moment that the sages told Solomon to summon two demons, one female and one male, and they kept tormenting them until they revealed the location of this creature to the king. Solomon went there, summoned these two beings, but they had no idea where the Shamir was. But they said that a high-ranking demon might know. This demon was called Ashmedai. Solomon asked them, "Where can I find the Shamir?" They told him, "Bring a male demon and a female demon and torment them together. They might know the location and could reveal it to you due to their suffering." Solomon brought a male demon and a female demon and tormented them together. And they said, "We don't know where to find the Shamir. Maybe Ashmedai, the king of the demons, knows." Ashmedai seems to be a very different name for a demon. However, they say he is a well-known figure in the infernal world. And those who have been following the channel for a while know that this is actually one of the many names of Asmodeus. And in this case, he would be the demon responsible for guarding the Shamir. And knowing this, King Solomon asked Banayahu, who was part of one of the bravest and most loyal groups of the king's soldiers, to capture Ashmedai and force him to hand over the Shamir. In this case, Benaiah would be known in the Bible by another name, Benaiah. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was over the army. Zadok and Abiathar were priests. Benaiah climbed a tree with a chain and waited for the appearance of the king of demons. When he appeared, he jumped on him and tied him up with chains. Ashmedai tried to break free, but it was very difficult since the chain had the words of God on it. Benaiah came down from the tree, came over and threw the chain around Ashmedai and trapped him inside it. When Ashmedai woke up, he struggled to remove the chain. Benaiah told him, "The name of your master is upon you. The name of your master is upon you. Do not tear the chain. The name of God is written on this chain, and it is forbidden to destroy it." According to the scriptures, when Asmodeus arrived and was captured, Solomon actually avoided seeing him. And Asmodeus ended up noticing this and always asked about the wise king. When Ashmedai arrived there in Jerusalem, they did not bring him into the presence of Solomon. Even 3 days passed. On the first day, he said to them, "Why doesn't the king want me to go to him?" And they told him he drank too much and was overcome by drink. Ashmedai took a brick and placed it on top of another brick. The servants came and told Solomon what he had done. Solomon interpreted the action and said to them, "This is what he told you through this illusion. Go back and give the king more to drink." The next day Ashmedai said to them, "And why does the king not want me to go to him?" They said to him, "He ate too much and was overcome by the food." Ashmedai took one brick from another and placed it on the ground. The servants came and told Solomon what Ashmedai had done. He interpreted Ashmedai's actions and said to them, "This is what he told you through this illusion. Take his food away." At the end of 3 days, Ashmedai came into the presence of Solomon. Ashmedai took a reed, measured 4 cubits, and cast it before him. He said to Solomon, "Look, when that man Solomon dies, he will have nothing in this world except the 4 cubits of his grave. You've conquered the world, yet you remain unsatisfied until you conquer me too." Asmodeus knew that the king wanted even more wisdom, wanted to learn more about him, and began to try to use this against Solomon. Solomon said to him, "I don't need anything from you. I want to build the temple, and I need the Shamir for that." Ashmedai said to him, "The Shamir was not given to me, but was given to the angelic minister of the air, and he gives it only to the wild rooster, also known as Duke Fate or Apopa, to whom he entrusts it by the strength of his oath to return it." After that, a conversation begins between Benaiah and the demon. Later, Benaiah said to Ashmedai, "What is the reason that when you saw that blind man who was lost on the road, you brought him to the correct road?" Ashmedai said to him, "They proclaim about him in heaven that he is a completely righteous man, and anyone who does good for his soul will merit entering the world to come." Then Benaiah asked, "And what is the reason that when you saw the drunk man who was lost on the road, you brought him to the correct road?" Ashmedai said to him, "They proclaim about him in heaven that he is a completely wicked man, and I did good for his soul so that he would consume his reward in this world and have no reward in the world to come." Benaiah continued and asked him, "What is the reason why you cried when you saw that wedding celebration? I knew that this man would die within 30 days. And the wife is required to wait for the Yavam, who is the brother of the husband who is underage, to reach the age of 13, adulthood, so that he can release her through Halitza, the ritual by which the Yavam frees the Yavama from her levirate bonds. Besides that," he asked, "what is the reason that when you saw that man tell the shoemaker, 'Make me shoes that will last 7 years,' you laughed?" Ashmedai said to him, "That man doesn't have 7 days to live. Does he need shoes that will last 7 years?" Benaiah then asked, "What is the reason that you laughed when you saw that sorcerer performing magic?" Ashmedai said to him, "Because he was sitting on the king's treasure. Let him use his magic to find out what is buried beneath him." These passages are a bit interesting because, in a way, Ashmedai, Asmodeus, implies that somehow he still answers to God. After that, Solomon ended up giving in to the desire to learn more about the demon. Solomon kept Ashmedai with him until he finished building the temple. One day he was alone with Ashmedai. He said to Ashmedai, "It is written for him like the high horns of the wild ox." And the sages say in the explanation of the verse, like the high horns, these are the ministering angels. The wild ox, these are the demons. In what way are you greater than us? Because the verse praises their abilities and powers over human beings. Solomon would have seen in the Torah about the evil powers of these spirits, and he became very curious. However, this power was part of the ministering forces necessary to maintain the world's balance. Basically, good and evil, and you should never lean more to one side than to the other. After all, one doesn't exist without the other, and the king had neglected that aspect. And then he ended up being deceived by Asmodeus, who took his place on the throne. Ashmedai said to him, "Take the chain engraved with the name of God off me, and give me your ring with the name of God engraved on it, and I will show you all my powers." Solomon took off the chain and gave him the ring. Ashmedai swallowed the ring and grew until he placed one wing in the sky and one wing on the earth. He threw Solomon a distance of 400 parasangs. Regarding that moment, Solomon said, "What profit is there for a person in all his labor under the sun?" With Solomon removed from the throne, Ashmedai took his place. Solomon's chain and ring would represent the Torah. When Ashmedai asked Solomon to get rid of them, he was actually asking him to leave the Torah and embrace the way of the nations, and thus the understanding of the forces of evil would be given to him. When Solomon left the Torah and threw Asmodeus' chain far away, the demon king took his place and is said to have ruled Israel for a certain time. Meanwhile, Solomon wandered around as a poor and unrecognizable man. In fact, it is said that it was at this moment that he wrote Ecclesiastes, as the following passage says, "There was a small city with few men in it, and a great king came against it, surrounded it, and built great bulwarks against it. And in it was found a poor wise man who saved that city by his wisdom, and no one remembered that poor man." There is even a passage in the Targum that says that this man in Ecclesiastes was actually Solomon. When King Solomon was sitting on the throne of his kingdom, his heart became very proud of his riches, and he transgressed the word of God and gathered many horses, chariots, and horsemen, and accumulated much gold and silver, and married foreign nations. After the Lord's anger was kindled against him, he sent Ashmedai, the king of the demons, who expelled him from the throne of his kingdom and took the ring from his hand, so that he would wander and roam the world to be reproved. And he traveled through the cities of the countryside and the cities of the land of Israel, crying and lamenting, saying, "I am Koralef, Ecclesiastes," whose name was Solomon, the king of Israel, in Jerusalem. Thus begins Solomon's journey to prove that he was the true king of Israel. Regarding the verse, "And this was my portion from all my labor," Grimoire asks, what is the meaning of the expression "and this"? This expression is always used as an allusion to something that is actually in hand or can be shown. Ravish and Moll disagree about the meaning of this phrase. One of them said this refers to Solomon's people who remained in his hand, and one of them said this is referring to his cloak. Solomon went from door to door collecting charity. Wherever he went, he would say, "I, Ecclesiastes, reigned over Israel in Jerusalem." When he finally arrived at the Sanhedrin in Jerusalem, the sages said, "Now, a fool doesn't stick to one subject all the time. So what is this subject? Is this man perhaps telling the truth that he is Solomon?" At a certain moment, everyone realized that the one on the throne was actually an impostor. The wise men said to Benaiah, "Does the king require you to be with him?" Benaiah said to them, "No." They sent the queens and asked, "Is the king coming to be with you?" The queen sent a reply to them, "Yes, he is coming." They sent a request to the queens, check his feet to see if they are human feet. The queen sent the reply to the wise men, "They always come with socks and it's not possible to see their feet." The queens kept discussing the king's behavior, and he demands from them, that is the queens, to engage in a sexual act when they are menstruating. He also demands that Bathsheba, his mother, engage in sexual relations with him. Once the Sanhedrin heard this, they understood that this was an impostor and not, in fact, Solomon. They brought Solomon, gave him a ring, and the chain on which the name of God was engraved. When Solomon entered, Ashmedai saw him and fled. The Grimoire adds, and even so, although Ashmedai fled, Solomon feared him. And just as it is written, write like this. Each man with his sword on his thigh, out of fear in the nights. Ravi and Shemuel disagreed regarding this story of Solomon. One said he was a king and then became a commoner and never returned to his position as king. And the other said he was a king and became a commoner because he finally returned to the throne and defeated Ashmedai. As you saw, there really is a story of Solomon invoking and getting involved with demons. But why did I tell this whole story if at no point does he summon the demons of Getcha? Well, as you saw, Asmodeus took Solomon's place for a while. That would help explain some of the king's strange behaviors during his reign. And among those behaviors, there could be the summoning of the 72 demons. Notice that I said it could be, it's not a confirmation, okay? So then, the one who would have actually summoned the 72 demons of the Gocha would be Asmodeus, not Solomon. If you've watched the video up to this point, please leave a like to show that you enjoyed it, and also subscribe so you don't miss any videos, all right? Thanks, see you, bye.